This is the panel for writing effective proposals and funding insurance requirements. We have 3 panelists here. I'm going to introduce them one by one before they come up to speak. So our first speaker is Ms. Pam Jones. She is the Division Chief for Procurement Operations Division in Montgomery County Government. And Pam has seen, I'm not exaggerating, probably thousands of proposals and solicitations because she started working since she was 5. And she's going to give you very good tips regarding when we look at proposals, what are the requirements we're looking at. Hopefully when you get out of this panel today, you will be able to write beautiful proposals and you will learn how to get funding, get your capital, and win some contracts with us.
Good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Yeah. So I'm Pam Jones. I am with Montgomery County Government Office of Procurement. And one of the reasons I titled what I'm going to discuss today, writing effective proposals and not writing proposals, is whether it's 15 minutes, 30 minutes, or an hour, I'm not going to sit here and can everyone hear me? I'm not going to be able to sit here and teach you the actual writing skills, the editing, the core content of what your proposals are. There's many out there who can do that. But what I want to share with you is how to write an effective proposal, getting your proposals recognized, getting the maximum scores for your proposal based on the proposals that we have seen in the Office of Procurement and that I've personally seen for over 20 years in procurement. And so this is kind of like our little insider tips that I want to be able to share with you on how to write effective proposals. And some of these may seem very common sense approach, very simple, and some of them are, but you will be amazed at the number of proposals that we have seen, whether it's from small business and large businesses, that make some of these errors that have a great impact on their proposals being considered or even being seen wrong. So what the first category is appearance. It is very important that every proposal be clearly labeled with the solicitation number. And you might be saying, okay, well that's kind of very common sense. But on any given day, we can have a number of proposals or solicitations that are due. And we have had many boxes or many envelopes delivered to our office who don't make it at the time of the proposal submission or the due date because there's no markings and we don't know that it's tied to something that is being opened or closing that particular day. So it's very crucial. The other piece is to make sure you have contact information. I can tell you for one of the solicitations that we had a few years ago, and it was a very lengthy, maybe over 1,000 pages, project, the proposals we received, one of them from beginning to end, there was no contact information. We went to, at that time, and I'm dating myself, the Yellow Pages, we went to the internet, we tried to find information on the company because we had the company name, but there was no telephone number, no email addresses, nothing for us to be able to contact for the questions that we have. And so right from the beginning, you know, if you're going to submit a proposal and you're going to show the professional light and you're going to show that you can handle this business that the county may be providing, something as simple as that can cause a lot of frustration before your proposal is even considered. Making sure your proposals are organized based on the RFP requirements. You may have a standard template and you may have a manner and method in how you organize your responses to government agencies. But it's very important, whether it's Montgomery County or any other government agency. For us, we will always have a proposal submission section in our RFP. Please pay attention to that. Look at what the sections are. If your proposals are organized, and some of them will say that it's required to be organized, in that manner, then the qualification and selection committee will have a much easier time in reading what your responses are, matching it up to the evaluation criteria, and just by that alone, you can maximize the points that you get as part of that proposal response. We have had situations where we've had qualification and selection committees call us, or we've looked at scoring that's been given and we're like, well, you know, but I thought this company has had experience. Are you sure that you didn't see anything? And their proposal had something related to one criteria in the beginning. They had bits and pieces of it in marketing materials that were in the appendix. And so sometimes that may get missed, and sometimes if it's required to be organized in a certain way and it's not, they're going to look at that sections, and you might have embedded something somewhere else and it may not get seen and therefore not considered as part of points. So it's very important to maximize your points to make sure that they are organized in the manner that's in the proposal submissions. And the other piece is please to neatly package. Now, if you don't neatly package it, you're not going to get points marked off because there's no criteria for neatly packaging. But we have had proposals submitted that have literally just been pieces of paper that are stapled. And so before you even get to looking at the proposal, it just speaks to the quality and professionalism. And if you're responding to something that's more of a project summary, or you're going to be giving a report at the end of the scope, and your proposal is submitted in that fashion, it speaks volumes. And even though you're not getting points per se, just how you market or introduce yourself to the county in that manner can matter. Proposal accuracy. So I always say that in real estate, it's all about location, location, location. Well, in procurement, it is all about timing. And so you must. If you leave this workshop today and remember nothing else but this, I will be happy. You must submit your responses by the due date and time. So if it says October 5th at 3 p.m., at 3:01, it is late and we cannot consider it. And I know sometimes when businesses have spent overtime, weekends, they've put a lot of resources into submitting responses. Something as small as just making sure it gets there by the due date and time can make those hundreds or thousands or sometimes millions of dollars that have been invested in getting that proposal not even see the light of day. So it is very important. And it's crucial because we want to make sure we have an open, fair playing field. So if someone submits their proposal at 3:01, well, what happens to the business who submits it at 3:02? And what about the business who wants to submit it at 3:03? At some point, there has to be a cutoff, and that is why it is so important, and there is that hard stop. We also want to make sure if there are any changes to the proposal due date and time, that you're paying attention to that as well to make sure if there have been any changes, that you're noting those changes when you're submitting it. Make sure that the location and address are verified. I actually had a person call me one time. They were on Rockville Pike, so we're located in downtown Rockville. And they called me, it was about 5-10 minutes before the proposal was due, and they were like, I'm stuck in traffic, but I'm on my way. And I'm like, I really hope you get here, and hopefully you're here by 3. But it's very important. You've got to take traffic into account. You've got to take parking into account. If you've never been to the Rockville core, some of it's paid parking, some of it's garage parking, sometimes depending on the time of day, it's very busy. Sometimes there's construction going on. It is very important to make sure you know where you're going, what is the suite number, what is the location. On the front page of our request for proposals or our bids, you will always see what the location is, where the due date is, where the due time is, and what the office is. So please make sure you have those verified. You also want to make sure that the proposal submission requirements are verified. A lot of times people want to make sure we know about their company, and they have wonderful glossy pictures and charts and graphs, and that's great. And if you just have an impulsive need to include that, just do it like all the way in the back if the RFP does not call for it. But make sure you're paying attention to that proposal submission section. It will tell you, every RFP that we issue will have one. It will tell you exactly what we need your proposal to include. And I can't tell you how often pieces of that are missing from vendors' proposals. Solicitation amendments. A lot of times we will issue a clarification, a Q&A, questions and answers, as a result of vendor inquiries or as a result of pre-proposal conferences. We will do solicitation amendments if there are core things in the pages of an RFP that need to be changed based on feedback, based on errors, based on things we've noticed since we've issued that RFP. Please make sure when you get a copy of that RFP, if you've gotten it from a friend, if you've gotten it from a colleague, if you just happen to just see a copy laying around, make sure you've gone through our website. We have two options for you to download. There's one option that will say, basically, you don't need to tell us anything, you're just kind of curious and you can download it, but then we don't have your information and we cannot notify you for any changes that may come up. So please make sure you choose option 2 so we have your contact information and make sure that it stays current. We will give you e-notices for any solicitation amendment that comes out, including Q&A. So this is going to be my speed dating version because I've been given a little notice that my time is coming close to the end. Make sure that your proposals are complete. We had a business who had done business with the county before. They were one of several businesses under a multi-award contract, and it was an IT contract. That particular one had cost as a big component. Although it was an RFP, there were certain products that were part of that solicitation, so cost was weighted heavily in that RFP. And we got a call after the due date and time, and that company said as they were collating everything, they left out the cost section. There is nothing we could do. So they got a 0 for that cost section, and I can tell you they spent a lot of time on it, and it was 40 points. So, when I say some of these things are common sense, simple, but you gotta have this checklist in front of you and make sure that before you submit a proposal, you've gone down this list. Otherwise, those hours and those personnel costs spent on getting that proposal to us is not going to get considered in the maximum manner it should. In terms of content, complete, concise, including a description for each submission item. I've kind of gone over it a little bit already, but it's very important. You don't need to give us a thesis unless it's asked for, but be concise, be direct, be very descriptive in the areas that we are asking for in the proposal submission section. I've been doing this for more than 20 years, and I can tell you that section, along with the method of award and the evaluation criteria, is what the qualification and selection committee looks at. Everything else that you want to spend your time on is great, but that's really where your focus should be. Please make sure resumes, samples, or any other required submissions that are part of that in addition to your proposal, if it asks for a writing sample, a sample report, please make sure that you include that and mark those clearly. Please make sure that as you're giving us your narrative or your information or your experience, that you're focusing on the areas that are in our evaluation criteria. Every RFP that we issue will have a method of award, and every method of award will tell you how the qualification and selection committee are going to rate your proposal. We don't hide it, it's published, it's there in every solicitation, and it could be different. So please, for each RFP, make sure you look at that and make sure you highlight those areas in your written proposal. If there are any exceptions, if there's a technical requirement, some sort of terms and conditions that you're taking exception to, you need to make sure you highlight that, but you also want to be clear that whether it's Montgomery County or other agencies, not every agency is going to waive something or modify something. So you have to be very clear when you're submitting the proposal that you're looking at those different compliance requirements and terms and conditions to make sure that you can adhere to those as part of a resulting contract. You also want to make sure that you have a clear understanding of the jurisdiction scope and project requirements. In an RFP, we try not to dictate A through Z. We want to give you the parameters. We want to hear from you the methodologies that each vendor has that could be different from one another to reach that end goal. But within those parameters, there are some finite requirements. And we just want to make sure if you think you have something new, creative, completely different, you should probably let us know that ahead of time, because it could be something so new and so different that we may not have the funding for it. It may truly be a different departure from what the county's programmatic staff are ready to accept at this point. So an RFP is intended to be created for you to respond with your methodologies, but still keeping within those overall parameters. So if you have something completely different, your first RFP response might not be the time to test that out. You might want to ask those things ahead of time to make sure that it's something that could be considered and still kind of meets the overall parameter, so that the qualification and selection committee can easily evaluate apples to apples. In terms of timeliness, so I've already beaten you down in terms of due date and due time, and that's like embedded in everybody's head. I will tell you, we've had situations where people have called us, they just got into a car accident, and they literally did come to our office after the due date and time, and you could see there was a little blood and they were a little disheveled. We've had delivery company drivers come and tell us that they are going to be fired if we don't accept the proposal. We've had VPs from companies, and these are large businesses, these are not small businesses, that have come and called us, called the director, escalated it up. But again, our goal is to have an open, fair competition. And so it is very important that you know that the due date and due time does matter, and we do take that seriously, so that everybody who spent the time and spent the effort in getting it there, that now we're not all of a sudden opening up the flood doors, and those who made that effort, their proposals are part of what gets considered. If you have any questions, if you look at our solicitation, you're like, this really seems like it's geared towards something, and I don't even know if they want us to even respond. If you see something where you're like, this really isn't how this industry works, or why are they asking pricing like this, because that's not what we do, please tell us. We are not married to our solicitations in that way. We actually want you to know. We would prefer you know. Please let us know before the due date and time if you have those types of questions, if you have those types of concerns. A technical contact and procurement contact, I feel like I'm on that thing. I need to live away from grace. I'm almost done, like 30 seconds. So please let us know before the due date and due time, because that's when we can consider it. We're happy to issue Q&A if something needs to be clarified, if something was an error, if something wasn't explained correctly, it was too vague, or if something really was too specific and shouldn't be and we didn't realize it, bring it to our attention. We're happy to consider it and make changes as necessary. At the end, you'll see there's a how to do business that tells you how to find out about opportunities. There's a handout back at the table. Please take a look at that. Please attend any pre-submission conferences that are available to you. And last but not least, proposals can improve with debriefings. We've actually spent this past year kind of revamping, doing some training for our contract administrators and using departments, and also putting out guidelines for you as businesses on our website, and that link is on the effective proposal checklist, where you can look to see how you go about asking for a debriefing and what you're supposed to get out of that. So we can't tell you about anybody else's response, but we're happy to meet with you, or the head of the QSC is happy to meet with you to give you the strengths and weaknesses of your own proposal in an effort to hopefully help you improve it and be much more successful in the future. So with that, thank you.
I just realized I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Grace Daniel. I'm the division chief for the contract compliance division within the Office of Procurement. So Pam manages one division, and my division manages the local small business reserve program, the minority female disabled owned business program, as well as wage requirements laws. If you are interested in any of those programs, if you're a local business or if you're minority owned, let's talk afterwards. Maybe I want to make sure that you're registered with us and you are willing and able to do business with us. If you are already a contractor with us, then sometimes if you hear from us, that's because you have some compliance issues, so and you don't want to get there. So anyway, that's what our office manages for Montgomery County. So our next speaker is Miss Kimberly Gay Armour. I want to apologize that we missed R in her last name. So her last name should be Gay Armour with R. She is the division chief with the risk management of the Department of Finance in Montgomery County. Her division is responsible to set the requirements for our bonding and insurance requirements. So we'll let her take away.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I'm not the division chief, but I'm the section chief. My boss, Pam Schroeder, is the division chief. Good morning. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We're very happy to be part of the forum today, and we welcome the opportunity to help the county vendors, partners, potential vendors and partners understand the risk management component of the contracting process. I am the county's insurance manager, and we run the Montgomery County Self-Insurance Program, keyword self-insurance. So we do have a very large insurance company that we have as the county. We handle a lot of the county's agencies, park and planning, public schools, HOC, and other county agencies in our insurance program. I just mention that because a lot of county people or people who do business with the county are not necessarily familiar with that format of how the county runs its insurance program. So we handle property and casualty only, no health and life, but those two kinds of insurance we handle. We hope that you come away with a little bit better understanding of how insurance works in our group. I have with me Winnie Jordan today, and she is on my team. She's the one, and thank you so much for all that you do. She's the one who looks at many solicitations and eventual certificates of insurance, so I'll get to those in just a minute. What's risk management? Well, what is it really? At the end of the day, it is a process for dealing with operational and financial risks that every organization faces, from the smallest two-person firm to the county. C.E. Leggett mentioned that we have a $5.3 billion budget in the county. So we face it. All of our agencies in the self-insurance program face it. All of you face it. Vendors and contractors doing business with the county are required to provide insurance to protect the citizens of Montgomery County, the county itself, which is different, and just the whole aspect of doing business with the county, because the Local Government Tort Claims Act, which we are ruled and legislated by, does not allow us as the county to ever defend or indemnify for a party that does business for the county. So those are just important things to remember, that we can't cover you for anything that you do. We will cover ourselves, and we have to, but we can't cover another organization, a contractor, or a vendor. The risk management's role in county contracting is to work with procurement at a very high level, to work with departments to identify the potential hazards and issues of the work, supplies, or services that you're going to be providing to the county. We review what or who can be harmed and what the potential exposure is. And then we evaluate with how to deal with those exposures, typically by requiring insurance in varying types and limits, different kinds of insurance and limits of liability, depending on the scope of work. So what's considered in our review? We look at the scope of services or a description of the commodity that's being purchased. We look at the location of the work to be performed, the impact on the community, the surroundings, the environment. Winnie and I we had a trip down here from Rockville this morning. Okay, so we drove down, Veers Mill Road, and on the way back I said, okay, remind me to go past this little part in Wheaton. Remind me to go, these are current projects that we're working on, and we're doing our little risk analysis as we're driving back to Rockville this afternoon after this forum, because these are all things that matter to us, and they matter to, stormwater issues. There's so many things that go into us determining what insurance requirements should be in the solicitation that you're going to receive. The amount of the contract price or the contract value. We don't usually say that legislates whether insurance is going to be provided. It might have an impact on the amount of insurance that we require, but it's very rare that we waive insurance requirements. So even if it's a small contract, we might well still require insurance on a reasonable basis. And then who does the work? So do you have employees? Do you have contractors? Do you have subs that are going to be working with you? Do you have a person? Are you the sole owner, manager? Are you going to perform the work? So all of those things go into our consideration of what insurance requirements we're going to recommend that procurement include in the solicitation. The county's general terms and conditions does have a table that by default may occasionally be used in contract agreements. But prior to solicitation, risk management is consulted to review and assign insurance types and limits. So Pam's group, someone in procurement sends us over, or one of the departments sends us over the details of the solicitation, scope of services, and so on. Winnie and or I read through it, and we assign the insurance requirements. So there's a special not an addendum, but an exhibit in the solicitation that lists out the insurance requirements that you should be following. All of it's behind the scenes. This is us working with procurement and our operating departments prior to an RFP or an IFB being released. When you're publicly posted for the award, then you send along a certificate of insurance to meet the requirements. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. When an IFB or an RFP is posted and the insurance requirements are part of it, please be sure to take them seriously. You know, as Pam was talking, we sound like we are actually no fun at all because everything is serious to us. But it is. You know, we want you to consider those insurance requirements, look for them, look at them, talk with your insurance advisor or your broker or your agent. Let them know that this is what the county is requiring, and be sure to include those costs in your proposal, your pricing, your costing for your proposal back to the county. Very important. As I said, waivers of insurance are very rare, and you should expect that the insurance requirements will stand. If you do have specific clarification questions, please ask in advance of the solicitation closing, and don't call on your way on Rockville Pike, you know. If I do have one comment about task order contracts. If it is a task order contract and you don't know if you're going to get any work, you know, if it's down the road, it's possible that you'll be assigned part of a task order, a job. Ask in advance. Usually we are flexible and reasonable in terms of what should be required in those kinds of contracts. We may even allow ourselves flexibility, but generally we're going to have at least minimum requirements in an initial task order contract. Really brief discussion of insurance types and limits. General liability, your premises, your operations, so covers you for the work and services that you perform, as long as you're not a professional. I'm going to come back to that. We're talking doctor, lawyer, engineer, architect. Automobile liability, operation of vehicles or driving transportation is part of the contract. Workers' compensation, protecting you and your employees if they are injured at work while they're doing work for the county or in any part of your business. Professional liability, coverage for errors and omissions committed by you and your firm. I've heard people say that it really only applies to, licensed professionals. That's not necessarily the case, but because there are some professionals that are going to need to provide that coverage that aren't licensed by the state. But if you need it, you probably know who you are. If you don't, write to our email address and I'll tell you. Cyber liability. Thank you so much to Mr. Doss. Where are you? He mentioned cyber liability. I guess he left. But in the opening presentation, cyber liability generally will be required if you are handling PHI, personal health information, PII, personally identifiable information of a citizen of our county. We're going to require you to carry cyber liability coverage. Be asking your broker about it if you are in that area. The additional insured is always a question, frequently a question. The county needs to be an additional insured on your general liability policy and your auto liability policy if it's required. It is because the county, again, as I mentioned, cannot cover you. We cannot cover you for what you do. We want your insurance policy, your carrier, to take us by the hand, cover us, defend us. It avoids us suing you if there's a problem. So the additional insured just adds us onto your policy. We don't have to pay the premium. We don't necessarily get notices if it's going to get canceled, but we will get coverage if it is necessary. If you belong to a professional association, you may want to ask them if they have insurance available. Your homeowner's insurance, broker agent may be able to assist you to find a commercial carrier if that homeowner's carrier can't provide you with insurance. But I did want to mention the professional association because very frequently they will have group programs that you can be a part of. A certificate of insurance is the document that we look at then after you've been given the award, publicly posted for the award. We review the certificate of insurance. Again, send those insurance requirements off to your broker when you're reading through the solicitation. Then they will be familiar with it and they will know when you have the happy news that you've been publicly posted for an award, you need a certificate of insurance issued to the county, they'll know how to do it, send it over. So they'll know how to ask the insurance carrier. Bonding. 3 minutes. Oh, Winnie says I have 4 minutes. Bonding. Risk management, 5 minutes. Okay. Risk management does not typically get involved with bonding per se. We may be asked the question, but the county does typically require both performance and payment bonds on construction contracts and on some service contracts. And on the service contracts, we usually require just a payment bond. Construction contracts usually are requiring a 95% performance bond, so 95% of the contract price. And these requirements actually come from the legal department. Sometimes they will have maybe input or advice from risk management if they have specific questions about the services to be performed or how they might be protected. But the purpose of course, the bonds is to make sure the work gets done timely and per the scope and the details of the proposal. The payment bond, of course, is to ensure that contractors, subcontractors, and in some contracts, employees actually get paid by the contractor. So it's protecting you and it's protecting the county from having any complaints from third parties. I did want to mention real quickly about the indemnification, and just back to the beginning part of the discussion when we talk about hazards and exposures. The indemnity provision is in the contracts, all county contracts as well. We sometimes weigh in on it when we're asked, and on larger contracts, sometimes we're asked to advise, if there are changes that are acceptable on leases. So we have some indemnity expertise in our shop. But it is a requirement, the indemnification, wherein your organizations and companies defend, indemnify, and hold harmless the county from anything that you do. It really is just taking responsibility for your actions, errors, omissions, anything that you do. But that is it's a standard clause in contracts. I think my time is very close to being up. If you have questions, I put our risk management email on the handout that you have, but generally you should check with your procurement person, right, first, and they should direct questions to us. You're free to use the risk management mailbox, that's fine to do if you have just general questions. If it is a solicitation question, I will need to go through the procurement group because then I know if there are specific questions, answers have to be submitted to everyone. So, if you come through us, just be aware that whatever we tell you is going to go to everyone. Probably best to go to the buyer first, but we'll pick up the phone. So, thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you, Kimberly. We will have some time for Q&A at the end of the section. Our next speaker is Mr. Stanley Tucker. Mr. Stanley Tucker works for Meridian Management Group. His company is a contractor for the state of Maryland, and the two programs they manage for the state of Maryland are Video Lottery Terminal Fund and also Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority. And also they have some funding opportunities too.
Morning. Morning. Does everyone have a copy of your? No. Okay. Yeah, okay. Those that have a copy, I'm going to take you through the various financing components that we have, and we have several of them, and they work in conjunction with each other. So the two ladies that preceded me basically was talking about contracting opportunities and insurance, etc. Our goal is to help provide the funding to take advantage of these opportunities. Let me, local little history. Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority has been around since 1981. We've grown over the years. We provide funding for small, minority, and women-owned businesses. And it's pretty comprehensive, various financing components that we do have. That's why I actually have this. Let me tell you, under our Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, we have what we call a contract financing program. So those that obtain contracts, you can come to us for working capital financing, because that's a major challenge for some, particularly for small, minority, and women-owned businesses, having the working capital, because usually with government contracts, they're great, but you have to work for a period of time and then you get your check. But we can help you with the working capital financing to help you up front with that. And those are, and by the way, just a point, when you're looking for contracts, okay, you should simultaneously, actually before you obtain the contract, you want to get the financing. Because once you get the contract, there's usually a notice to proceed, 30 days or less, if you will. That's the wrong time to go go try to obtain financing, because sometimes it takes, depending on how well you're prepared in terms of obtaining the financing. So we encourage you to come see us prior to you going to look for a contract. That way we could look at your proposal and whatnot, and we can provide you with a line of credit pending receipt of the contract. So you will have your line in place, okay? And that line could be in place for at least a year, if you will, before you actually obtain the contract. So that's key, okay? Because cash is very, very important. So we have the contract financing program. We can provide funds directly. The maximum actually can go up to $2 million per deal. We can do the lines, we can provide lines of credit as well. So it's a very key kind of financing that you need for particularly performing government contracts. So that's very important. Let me point out to the gentleman that just came in, Anthony Williams. He's my partner. Okay, so he does a lot of this as well. The next component that we have is called our guarantee fund. And basically this fund is designed to provide guarantees to banks. Okay, and so that's what we want to do. Our strategy is to work with businesses that can't obtain conventional financing sources from banks, insurance, bonding from insurance companies as well. But our ultimate strategy is to work with you to really transition you to conventional financial institutions. So we can provide guarantees, if you will, to surety companies as well as banks to help you obtain different kinds of finance. It could be lines of credit, it could be term loans. You need to perform some of these contracts, you may need to provide some equipment, etc., where you need term financing, not just short-term financing, but term financing. Now terms will go up to 10 years, if you will. Our third component is surety bonding. We actually can act as a surety ourselves, or we can provide guarantees to surety companies. We can do both, okay? Again, we really encourage you to come to us early on so that we can provide this kind of financing, if you will. Here's a key point. We also have the ability to use these various components in conjunction with each other. Particularly if you're in construction, you're going to need bonding. Or in some service contracts, you're going to need bonding. We can provide the working capital in conjunction with the bonding. And if bonding is required, you need working capital. There's no question about it. You need working capital, period. So it's strategically, and we design these components so they can supplement and complement each other. We have two other components, which we call our Equity Participation Investment Program, where we actually can make an equity investment in a company. We also have what we call Invest Maryland, where we can make equity investments in a company as well. The Equity Participation Investment component really is our most flexible component that we have. We can provide guarantees, we can provide debt direct loans, we can provide equity investments. If you will, the only piece we can do in there is really our surety bonding component. The Invest Maryland is focused on technology-driven businesses primarily, if you will, but not so solely, but it is a component of kind of financing for early stage companies. We've started up a lot of companies over the years, so we know how to do that. When you come to us, whatever kind of financing that you come to us, one question that we always ask you, and that is, what's your end game? It's very interesting that when we ask that question, how few people are able to answer that question. Because if you have an end game, you can begin with the end in mind. And so when you get to there, you're not getting there by happenstance, you're strategically positioning and planning your company to get to the end game. Now, let me go to our Maryland Casino Business Investment Fund. This is another fund that we manage as well for the state of Maryland, and these funds are derived from the casinos and whatnot that have been developed here in Maryland. Several years ago, when the legislation was started, we were able to get some strategic language in the legislation that says 1.5% of the gross proceeds, of all the gross proceeds of the casino gaming, if you will, go into a fund to invest back into small minority and women-owned businesses here in the state of Maryland. We're the only state in the country that has got that into the law. Quickly, we have various financing products. We can do term loans, lines of credits, demand loans, letters of credits. We also have the ability to do micro loans. We don't do a lot of that. We try to have someone else do that for us, but the capability is there. The range of financing from $5,000 up to $500,000. The term of the debt could be it could be up to 10 years with the ability to amortize it longer. Interest rate on the debt, the terms of the loan, the interest rate can range between 4% and 8%. Our rates for lines of credit is generally between 4% and 7%. Now, we also can use some of this financing for technical assistance, if you will. Far too often companies come to us and we ask them for their financial statements or their marketing plan or help us understand your business model. That's one thing we're going to ask you. What is your business model? Help us to understand your business model. So we can understand your business model, we can help you better structure the financing based on your business model. So be able to really clearly share with us what is the business model that your company really has. And you'd be surprised that some folks don't even know their business model. That's very interesting. So we look at that, and if there are different services that sometimes companies need accountants to put together their financial statements, their tax returns, a marketing strategy, if you will. Some of these funds can be used for that as well. Now, here's a key point. It's a personal guarantees will be required. Yes, let me tell you why. If we can't sleep at night, we don't want you to sleep at night. If you don't have anything at risk, then you can just get up and walk away. We want you to have something at risk. We are not going to take all the risk in your venture. Okay? Make that hear me very clear. If we can't sleep at night, we don't want you to sleep at night. If you don't believe in your business that you can put something up, you understand, some risk, then why should we believe in your business? So that's a key point. Because if someone comes to you and asks you to lend them $500,000 or $100,000, what's the first question you're going to ask them? How you going to pay you back, right? Well, that's what we want to know as well. Okay, personal credit scores. Personal credit scores are important, but they're not a deterrent for us. Here's what's important. If you have challenges, if you've had challenges, and everyone has challenges financially at some point in their lives. If you had problems, tell us, because we are trained to find out. Okay, so if you don't tell us up front, and we do our due diligence, and we find out you've left something out, that's an integrity issue. Okay, and if that happens, then we're not going to do business with you. Because if you don't show integrity at that point, then we know that's a real problem. That deals with character as well. So I'm saying to you, tell us what the deal is. We're going to find out. Be straight up with us. If things happen, tell us what happened. What we're looking for is that your integrity. Did you try to run from the problem, or did you try to sit down and work it out? That's very important to us. I'll stop there. I know I shot a lot at you, but we want to have some time for Q&A. Thank you very much.
We do have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. Is there any question for any of the panelists? I saw her first. What's your question?
I had a question for you. I know you mentioned towards the end of the talk about debriefing. I didn't know that it existed. So
Okay.
basically, we just call and say we want you to look at a proposal for association.
The question is about our debriefing process.
So yeah, what we did was we put together, because a lot of times businesses would ask, and we're like, finance available, and don't people know? And the answer was like, no, they don't know. Or they didn't know how to go about it. There wasn't like a structure. And then also our departments didn't really have a structure. It was kind of like haphazard. So we put guidelines available. They're on the website at that link. And it will tell you at what point in the process, generally after we publicly post, that debriefings are available. If you are not successful in getting a county contract, that's not the end. It's still the beginning, because we have many contracts we let out in a given fiscal year. But it gives you an opportunity, and the unsuccessful offeror letters will give you the contact person from the qualification selection committee. It will give you the name of the procurement specialist in case the department doesn't get back to you. So we've tried to give you all the information up front in the communication, and as well as the guidelines to let you know what to expect, what the ground rules are. But yes, if you're responding to an RFP and you're not successful, then you can request a debriefing, and the qualification selection committee, or generally the chair, will meet with you and let you know your strengths and weaknesses of your proposal. And you know, sometimes there might be gaps and there are things that you can learn. Sometimes it may be you and the person who won it were very close. There wasn't anything drastically, you know, deficient in your proposal, and it may just be one was just slightly better in that particular instance. But for those of you who are newer to submitting proposals, it definitely can give you a better understanding of how your proposal was received, and maybe you thought you said things in a way, but maybe didn't come across clearly, and it's an opportunity for you to get that feedback and just improve that much more for the next go-around.
So it happens after the process? not
Yes,
before?
once there's a public posting,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. I have another question. Sorry. Okay, actually a couple of questions. The first one is, does the county utilize any electronic review devices, or are reviews, proposal reviews done purely by individuals?
They are done by the qualification selection committee members directly, yes. There are certain types of contracts, like health insurance or actuarial services, where they may ask for costs in like a spreadsheet or on some type of a drive so it can be easily digested and analyzed, but other than that, the proposals are done by people.
Okay, no keywords?
No keywords, no.
Okay, and then I think that I heard you say that proposals are typically require hard copy submissions, is that right for my company?
We usually do, but as part of the submission, depending on what it is, they also might ask for CD or DVD or thumb drives, depending on what it is and how large it is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your SOP in terms of, I guess, accepting the proposal? So is there one person who actually scores it before it goes to committee, or does the committee actually score it as they review it?
So all of the requests for proposals generally come to the Office of Procurement, and our specialists do look at it in terms of certain requirements, like if the wage requirements law is applicable, we will take a look at it. We'll see if there's something missing or incomplete or inconsistent. If it is, we will share it with the compliance division. They will reach out to the businesses because that's a particular item that has to be satisfied before we can move it forward to the Qualification and Selection Committee. But actual scoring happens by the Qualification and Selection Committee.
So it can still get to committee if something's not there. If something's not in the proposal, it can still go for committee for review.
Yeah, so with an RFP, it's unlike a bid where you have responsiveness issues. With an RFP, like the example I gave earlier, you can have a proposal that's missing the whole cost section. It will still get forwarded to the Qualification Selection Committee. Your proposal will just get scored accordingly if there are pieces missing or not clear. Now, there may be a few exceptions, so I'm talking general terms. So if it's a solicitation that's reserved under the local small business reserve program and your business is not eligible, so you're not an LSBRP or you haven't certified or done the application prior to the due date and due time, which is a requirement, then your proposal is considered unacceptable. So there are a few exceptions here and there depending on the circumstance.
Two last questions.
This question is for Mr. Tucker. I'm a little embarrassed about asking this because I thought I was on my game, but what are you looking for when you ask the question, what is your end game? I had no idea what you
What do you want to do with the company? Do you want to grow the company, sell it? Do you want to grow the company and turn it over to your children? Or you just want to liquidate it? What's your end game? Okay, if you want to grow a company and want to sell it and get equity out of it that you've earned over the years, what does that company have to look like for you to get the return that you're looking for? Okay, what's the size of company, depending on the industry that you're in, and what you could do due diligence and looking at other companies that have sold in the same industry. What do they look like? Okay, or you want to grow it and turn it to your kids. All right, I would love for. I have 3 sons. None of them are interested in my business. You know, one son is engineer. He's works for NSA. Another son that's into space, and another son that's into music. So they're entrepreneurs, but they're not interested in funding. Okay, so it depends on what you. I love to turn it over to them, but they aren't interested in it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Last question.
My question is, in terms of funding, are you just available for the state of Maryland, or you provide funding for federal contracts or any contract, even private industry contracts?
We could do both as long as the businesses are located in the state of Maryland. We could do private, public, state, etc. We can provide finance as long as the businesses are domiciled here.
Federal too?
Federal too, yes. We do a lot of federal business. Yes. By the way, let me say this to you. We are here today because for years, Montgomery County was always in the top 3 jurisdictions in which we provide financing to small minority women-owned businesses. I would say in the last, 5 years, Anthony?
Yeah, 5 years.
Last 5 years, they're not there. Montgomery County, the businesses in Montgomery County are not playing. And we know the county actually is the most diverse county in the state. And so we know the businesses are out here, we're not sure. So we are here, we want to do business in Montgomery County. Okay, that's why we're here, we'll continue to come. We're going to be working with the county and whatnot so that we have more of a presence here. Yes, sir.
Question in reference to your equity funding, is that more specifically giving up some of the equity of a firm and then having potentially a management team that could come in and help take the company to the next
next level, along with capital funding?
Yes, generally, yes. When we make an equity investment in a company, we are looking for that company to scale, to grow, because we are looking for an adequate return on our investment, because we have investors.
Sure.
Okay, so yeah, we're looking. It depends on the valuation. It depends on what industry that the company is in. Whether we feel as though that the industry itself is growing, and how's that company positioned within that industry, whatever product or service in which they have to really grow.
So specifically, if the company is doing very well and they're looking to really take it to that next level, they're the ones that we most attracted to.
Yes, ideally. However, we've done startups as well. I mean, we've birthed companies and worked with them all the way to them going public. We've done that several times, so we're not adverse to looking at startups.
All right, that's the wrap for our first session. And thank you, Ms. Jones, Ms. Gayammer, and Mr. Tucker. And I hope you did get some useful information. Our front desk have our, or actually in your bags, there's procurement guidebooks, pocket guide. It has our information and websites links on there. A lot of our programs and everything they talked about should be on our website also.